I never expected to be handed my past with a neat little bow on top. But that's exactly what happened the morning my father told us he was leaving the country. "I'm moving to Singapore," he said casually, as if it were the weather. "Crystal and I want to start fresh. But before I go, I want to make sure both of you girls are taken care of." Crystal stood beside him, her perfectly manicured hand curled around his arm. She was 26, a wellness coach with a perfect Instagram smile, and only 3 years older than me. He'd met her at some overpriced retreat in Arizona. Now she was becoming my stepmother. He pulled out 2 property deeds like it was some kind of game show prize. "One for each of you, equal value," he added, "but different in style." My sister Samantha's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She leaned in and flipped open the folders. One was a sleek, modern villa in Beverly Hills, white stone, infinity pool, gated, of course. The other, a beat-up old craftsman-style house in Westwood, complete with original wood paneling and creaky stairs from the 1950s. Samantha didn't even blink. "I'll take this one," she said, snatching the villa's deed before I had a chance to breathe. "Sure," I muttered, reaching for the other. "Doesn't matter." But it did. In my first life, because yes, I've lived this once before, I took that old house. I watched Samantha chase status and money. I watched her marry Nathaniel Whitmore, the richest man in our neighborhood, and spiral into misery. He was cold, distant, obsessed with work. She was lonely, bitter, and eventually set his house on fire. She spent the rest of her life behind bars. I, on the other hand, held onto the old place. One day, the city bought it out as part of a redevelopment project. The payout? Enough to start my own company. I launched a private investment firm, built a life I was proud of, and married someone who actually cared, Jackson Monroe. I thought that was the end of the story. Until I woke up. Not in my office, not beside Jackson, but here, back on that patio, the California sun hitting my skin like it had years ago, and my father grinning like he just handed me the world. "I want to make sure both of you are set up before I go," he said again, almost word for word. I blinked. My hands were empty. The 2 folders sat untouched on the table. Was I dreaming? No, this was real. I had been given another chance, and then it happened. Samantha's hand reached forward, but not for the Beverly Hills deed. She stopped midway and glanced at me with a strange smile. "You should take the villa, Brenda," she said sweetly. "It suits you more. I'll take the old house. It's got history, character." My breath caught. She remembered, just like I did. I kept my face still, gave a small nod, and picked up the deed to the Beverly Hills house. My heart was pounding. I could feel the tide shifting. Let her take the same path again. This time, I wasn't the fool. This time, I wasn't the one left behind. Samantha never liked to lose. So when she smiled and offered me the Beverly Hills villa, I knew something was off. "I'm just trying to be fair," she said, tucking a strand of honey blonde hair behind her ear. "The old house has charm. I don't need a big showy place. You take the villa." I played along, "Sure, thanks." But inside, alarms were blaring. In my last life, Samantha clung to that villa like it was a throne. Now she was giving it up like it was yesterday's purse. No way, she knew something. And I knew it too, we had both come back. That night, I lay in bed inside the Beverly Hills villa, staring at the ceiling as the past and future collided in my mind. I remembered the way Samantha cut me off the moment she married Nathaniel. How she told the world she was above me now. How she used me as her emotional punching bag while pretending we were close on Instagram. And then I remembered the fire. The sirens, the mugshot. She'd lost everything, her freedom, her reputation, her mind. But now, with her fake sweet voice and polished smile, she was trying to rewrite the script. And if I knew my sister, she wasn't planning to make the same mistakes. She was planning to outdo me. The next morning, I got a call from my realtor. "Miss Taylor, the Westwood property's value is expected to spike in the next year. Something about new tech companies moving in." Of course, Samantha was betting on a payout again. And then came the next move. I was having lunch on the terrace when her text came through. Guess who just bumped into Nathaniel Whitmore at a charity brunch? smirking face. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, he remembered me, said I looked radiant, we're having dinner next week. I still didn't reply. 5 hours later, she called. Brenda. Her voice was dripping with faux excitement. You'll never guess, Nathaniel is single. His last relationship was a disaster. Poor guy. He's gay, Sam, I said bluntly. She laughed, high-pitched and strained. That's just a rumor. People are jealous. He's complicated. Complicated is code for unavailable. Brenda, she snapped, dropping the sweet act, you're just bitter because I'm doing better this time. But that's okay. You've got your little house and your little dreams. I'm aiming higher. Higher than prison, I muttered. She hung up. Later that week, I caught wind that she'd been spotted loitering near Nathaniel's usual cafe downtown. Her Instagram lit up with a casual story of her sipping coffee in full makeup and a designer trench, with the caption, "Manifesting greatness. I didn't have time for this. I had bigger plans." I began rebuilding my investment firm, this time smarter, leaner, and faster. I contacted a few old allies, refreshed my pitch deck, and started looking at mid-sized real estate firms that were undervalued. That's when his name came back into my life. Jackson Monroe. I saw him on a business article trending on LinkedIn, Monroe Capital to expand into Southern California. The man I had once called husband. The man Samantha had married before burning his world down. I stared at his photo, clean-cut, powerful, guarded. And I wondered, did he remember too? I didn't expect to see him again. Jackson Monroe, the man who once married my sister and lost everything because of her. But there he was, stepping out of a sleek black Porsche, umbrella in hand, looking just as sharp as I remembered, maybe sharper. His tailored navy coat, the way his jaw tightened when he scanned the gray sky, even the effortless way he held the keys between two fingers, everything about him screamed control. And for a moment, I hesitated. Because last time, he never even saw me. I was Samantha's invisible little sister. The one standing in the shadows of their whirlwind, firework-fueled disaster of a marriage. But that was the last time. This time I had a name, a house, a plan, and if fate was going to throw Jackson Monroe back into my orbit, then fine, let's see what game the universe was playing. It started in the most mundane way. I was waiting at a bus stop near Westwood, soaked from the drizzle, holding my tote bag over my head like an idiot. The next rideshare was 20 minutes away. I had just sold the old house and was on my way downtown to finalize the transfer. My phone was dead, my nerves were fried, and then brakes. His Porsche stopped in front of me like some kind of scene from a Netflix rom-com. The window lowered. "You waiting for the bus?" His voice was warm, confident, slightly amused. I squinted through the mist. "You stalking me?" He smiled. "Would you believe me if I said I live next door now?" "No. Get in, Brenda. I'll take you wherever you need to go." I hesitated, but honestly, I was wet, cold, and curious. So I got in. The silence in the car buzzed with recognition. "You remember," I finally said. Jackson glanced at me. "Yeah, I do." Both of us fell quiet again. We weren't just talking about names and faces. We were talking about the unspoken, the fire, the lies, the betrayal. I looked at his hands on the wheel, steady, precise, capable. The same hands that had built an empire before Samantha burned it down. "So, what now?" I asked. He shrugged. "I was going to offer you a job." I laughed. "What?" "You're rebuilding, I'm expanding. Seems like a smart alliance." I turned to face him. "And you don't care that I'm her sister?" His jaw tensed. "No, I care that you're not her." That night, we both ended up at the same charity gala in Santa Monica. Of course, Samantha was there too, trailing Nathaniel Whitmore like perfume. Her eyes narrowed when she saw me walk in beside Jackson, our arms barely brushing, but enough for people to notice. She made her way over immediately. "Well, this is nostalgic," she said, swirling her champagne. "You two look cozy." "Funny," I replied. "I was thinking the same thing when I saw you following Nathaniel around like a lost puppy." Her smile vanished. "He invited me." "Sure he did." Then Jackson stepped in. "Samantha," he said smoothly, "don't cause a scene. This event isn't about you." Her mouth dropped open. And in that instant I saw it, the panic, the unraveling. She thought she was still ahead, still in control, but the game had shifted. This time I had the board. As the night wore on, I moved from conversation to conversation, investors, developers, old money, new capital. People began noticing me, asking about my firm, offering meetings. It was happening again, but better. At the edge of the crowd, Jackson raised a glass toward me. I raised mine back. Let Samantha chase the ghosts of her old life. Let her repeat the same cycle. I wasn't interested in revenge. I was too busy building something real. Weddings are supposed to be beautiful, sacred, joyful, but the only thing sacred about this wedding was how fast it unraveled. The invitation arrived 3 weeks earlier, cream-colored cardstock with embossed gold lettering. Mr. Nathaniel Whitmore and Ms. Samantha Taylor request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration. Beverly Hills Country Club. Black tie. I stared at it for a full minute before I laughed. She was really doing it. She was really marrying the same man who had made her life a living hell. Again, but this time she thought she'd won, and for a while it looked like she had. The morning of the wedding, Samantha's name was everywhere. Fashion blogs gushed over her timeless elegance. Influencers reposted her diamond-studded rehearsal gown. Even the local business papers covered the merging of two LA legacies. It was a spectacle. The Whitmore family spared no expense. A cathedral-sized glass tent, a $100,000 floral arch, a gospel choir, ice sculptures, champagne fountains, and Samantha crowned literally in a crystal tiara. I arrived with Jackson arm in arm. The valet opened the door. Flashbulbs popped. "Who's that with Monroe?" Someone whispered. Samantha saw me before I saw her. She stood at the altar, radiant in a $1 million gown, until her eyes locked on mine. There was something frantic behind her smile. Maybe she sensed it, maybe she knew. The ceremony dragged on like a movie that wouldn't end. But then, it did. Right as the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Nathaniel hesitated. His jaw tightened. He looked down at Samantha and barely brushed her lips with a quick, dry peck. The kind you... 3 days after the wedding disaster, she called me again. This time, she didn't scream, she begged. "Brenda," her voice was raw, quiet, "please, you have to help me." I stayed silent, my phone pressed to my ear as I stared out at the Los Angeles skyline from the penthouse I now called home. The city shimmered like it had something to prove. Samantha sniffled. "They locked me in a room, Nathaniel's family. They said unless I make a public statement, say the videos were fake, that it was all a prank, I'm done. No house, no money. No baby support." She was pregnant. I didn't need her to say it. I already knew. I saw it in the way her hand trembled at the wedding, the fullness in her face. I had carried her secrets long enough to read the signs. "Brenda," she whispered, "you're the only one who can fix this." I met her in the hospital the next day. She looked like a ghost, drained, pale, holding her belly like it was all she had left. She barely made eye contact as the nurse adjusted her IV. "I need you to speak at the press conference," she said. "Tell them it was your idea, that you edited the video to sabotage the wedding. Please, I can't lose this baby and lose my life too." I didn't answer, not right away. Instead, I stood, walked over to the window, and let the sunlight hit my face. Then I said it. "Okay." She blinked, stunned. "You will." I nodded, but on one condition. The press conference was held 2 days later at the Beverly Hills Civic Center. Dozens of reporters, flashing cameras, live streaming press. The Whitmore PR team practically sang with relief when I walked on stage. I took a seat, smiled, opened my laptop, and connected it to the screen behind me. "I know you all came here expecting a confession," I said, my voice steady. "So here it is." Click, the projector flickered to life, but it wasn't a confession, it was evidence. Slide after slide, contracts, emails, financial records, construction blueprints. Everything the Whitmore family had hidden for years. Fraud, money laundering, bribery, fake development permits, unsafe housing materials, political hush money. The room went dead silent. I watched Nathaniel's father freeze. One of the cousins stood up, then sat right back down. And then, pandemonium. Nathaniel lunged across the stage, grabbing me by the collar. "You bitch. You ruined everything." Before he could do more, Jackson was there, slamming him back with a single punch that echoed across the marble floors. The live stream ended, but the story was just beginning. Within hours, the SEC froze Whitmore Group's accounts. Federal agents raided their offices. Samantha went into labor from the stress. I heard she delivered a premature baby boy. Tiny, fragile. Left in the NICU before she even held him. They say karma works slowly. But this time, she moved like lightning. 2 weeks later, I visited her in the hospital again. She was sitting up now, gaunt but awake. "You said you'd help," she hissed. "You lied." I looked her straight in the eye. I did help. I helped end a dynasty that ruined countless lives, including mine. She threw a plastic water cup at me. It hit the floor and cracked. "Why?" she whispered. I leaned in, lowered my voice, and said, "Because I'm not your shadow anymore. I don't clean up your messes. I build empires from the ashes you leave behind." I walked out without looking back. That night, I sat with Jackson in our apartment, legs curled under me, laptop open as I reviewed offers from 3 major hedge funds. He handed me a glass of wine. "You okay?" I nodded, more than okay. Because this wasn't just revenge, it was liberation. 3 months after the Whitmore scandal shattered LA's high society, I signed the paperwork to officially acquire their last remaining asset, the downtown headquarters of Whitmore Group. The building still had their name etched into the glass doors. I walked through them in heels sharper than any insult Samantha had ever thrown at me, nodded at the press swarming the entrance, and headed straight to the top floor. "Remove the signage," I told my assistant. "Everywhere. I want nothing left but the bones." A few days later, a new name went up in gold: Phoenix Capital. Because if I was going to rise from the ashes, I was taking the skyline with me. Investors had assumed I'd flip the company, sell off the real estate, dissolve the departments, but I had a different idea. I didn't just want to clean up the Whitmore's mess. I wanted to rebuild ethically, powerfully, publicly. We launched new housing projects in working-class neighborhoods. Clean, affordable, safe, no cut corners. We opened scholarships for young women in finance. We hosted town halls instead of bribing officials. Every time someone said, "She only got here because of Jackson," I released another quarterly report. Numbers don't lie, and every quarter we grew, faster, stronger, louder. Meanwhile, Samantha disappeared from the headlines. No more sponsored content, no more glamorous selfies. Last I heard, she was living in a facility for recovery and reflection upstate. I didn't check in. I had checked out of her chaos for good, but I did visit the baby once. I didn't announce it. I just quietly donated a new neonatal wing to the children's hospital and left a trust in the boy's name. Not for Samantha, for him. The child deserved a chance to grow up without shame. And maybe, someday, someone would tell him the truth, that his aunt didn't abandon him. She just broke the cycle. At the office one Friday, I stayed late, alone. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a promise. My city. My empire. Jackson arrived around 9 p.m. carrying 2 burgers and a bottle of wine. "Date night in the war room?" he asked with a grin. "I'm the CEO," I replied, flipping a folder closed. "I get to pick the battlefield." He sat across from me, watching me for a moment. "You know," he said slowly, "you've become exactly who you were meant to be." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I remember you before. You were smart, quiet, always holding back. But now," he leaned closer, "now you burn brighter than anyone I've ever met." My cheeks flushed. I looked away. Sometimes I feel like I'm still catching up to myself. He smiled gently. "You're not catching up, Brenda. You're leading." That night, he didn't ask for anything. No labels, no pressure. He just held me like someone who knew I didn't need to be saved, only seen. And for the first time in both my lives, I believed him. They say when you finally win, it doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes, it feels like peace. Like sleeping through the night without grinding your teeth. Like sipping your coffee and not checking your phone for disaster. Like standing in a room full of power and not shrinking, because now you are the power. That was me. A year after the Whitmore collapse, Phoenix Capital stood tall, debt-free, scandal-free, thriving. Forbes called me the dark horse of L.A. finance. Business Insider called me the woman who rebuilt better. But I didn't care about headlines anymore. I cared about impact. I cared about freedom. And I cared about waking up next to someone who knew me, not the version people projected, not the sister people forgot, but me. Jackson proposed in the most ridiculous way. We were at a rooftop investor gala. Champagne, string quartet, the usual scene. Suddenly he dropped to one knee in front of everyone. Cameras clicked. Gasps echoed. My face turned beet red. "Brenda Taylor," he said with that slow, steady confidence that always made my heart skip, "you built your empire from scratch. Now will you build the rest of life with me?" I looked around at the crowd, then at him. Then I burst out laughing. "Oh my God," I said, shaking my head, "this is so extra." He blinked. "So, is that a no?" I grinned. "It's a not like this." Later that night, after the lights dimmed and the crowd disappeared, we stood on the balcony of our apartment in Silver Lake, barefoot, watching the city breathe. "No big wedding," I said. "No tiaras, no press." He nodded. "Deal."